Everyone, this is We Charge Colonialism. We want to announce our first program. It's going to be a live stream. The date that we have set is June 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The subject of the live stream is Why Black Organizations Struggle. So this is going to be a panel discussion. We hope that a lot of you will tune in. You can find that on the We Charge Colonialism YouTube channel. I want to be sure that I'm clear. It's not going to be on the African Esquire YouTube channel. It's going to be on the We Charge Colonialism YouTube channel. So if you can search that, there's also a link to the channel down below. You can subscribe and you will be able to be a part of our live stream. So hope to see you everyone on. I will see you guys.
There are many of our people who are thinking more deeply and more broadly, looking at it as it actually is, and are beginning to see it more in the international context and the relation that it has with the African struggle, a human rights struggle, or the struggle for human rights. And as such, we can then take it into the United Nations.
To bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
Do solemnly swear to protect the Black nation. To protect the Black nation.
Hundreds of protesters dressed in black, armed with assault rifles, and a passionate plea at Stone Mountain Park today demanding the carving of Confederate figures be removed from the mountain. Those figures include Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and Stonewall Jackson. And although some called it an alarming sight, park police tell us they had no issues with that gathering. Jay Plyburn joins us live from the park with the latest. Jay?
Hey, good evening. It's been an interesting Independence Day here at Stone Mountain, an area which usually sees about 4 million visitors each year, partially because of this unique monument behind me, a Confederate monument at that. And take a look at the video from earlier this afternoon. There were not originally many people here today. The park actually just reopened after closing for COVID-19. But this afternoon, more than 100 people showed up right here protesting the monument, which is one of the largest of its type in the country. The protesters were heavily armed, but workers with the park's public safety division said they had no issues with the group coming in to exercise their free speech.
Hey family, welcome to We Charge Colonialism. We are an organization of Pan-Africanists in the United States who are calling for the recognition that the United States has been colonizing our people at home in the United States and abroad, and obviously at our real home that is in the African continent. So if you are interested in joining our efforts, we have a website, wechargecolonialism.org, and you can find out more about our organization if you would like to join us and join the fight and be active. You can sign up to be a member on our website, or if you want to just get updates from us, you can also do that via our social media or Facebook, or you can also just send us an email and let us know that you want to keep up with us. So I wanted to talk about this topic, and someone actually requested me to talk about this on my channel, African Esquire TV, and so I felt like it was a good topic to discuss. Many of you probably saw on the 4th of July, there was a very, very bold demonstration of Black people who were armed, and they were a group called NFAC, which stands for the Not Effing Around Coalition. So I want to say a number of things about the demonstration. One, I thought it was very productive because more and more the white establishment is seeing that not all Black people are this monolith that is painted. The monolith being painted is that all of us believe that the only way for us to get freedom is through die-ins or sit-ins or boycotts, and no one is willing to defend themselves. No one's willing to defend their family. We're all essentially there to be walked on or stepped on. Now, I'm not going to criticize anyone who does, peaceful protests, but I certainly won't criticize anyone who demonstrates and says that if you do something to me, I will defend myself. So that was very important to be clear to the nation. You cannot paint us one way. You cannot assume that we're all going to comply with the system of white supremacy and that we're willing to let our loved ones die and not have anything to do as you won't have a ramification for those deaths. That was an important showing. So, I certainly think that things like this need to happen more. Again, you can have your die-ins. I personally really do not like those protests, to be honest with you. The idea that I'm going to stand up against police brutality by laying on the ground and pretending to be dead. I personally am not a fan. But if you want to protest that way, certainly. But we certainly need other people who are willing to show other means of protest. So that's one thing I wanted to point out about the actual actions. And I was very, encouraged by the words of the people. I think that this shows, however, that there's such a bias in the typical mainstream media, and really by a lot of people who identify themselves as being a part of Black Lives Matter. There's a real bias against Black people showing independence and self-determination. We kind of see more people who want to appeal to coalitions outside of the community, and anytime that someone says, well, we're going to organize within the community, there's a real bias towards that. And of course, the bias being that it's not marketable. There's some people who I'm starting to realize they make their living off of being on these panels. They make their living off of going to white universities. They make their living off of this thing, and they get to market themselves as an activist, but they don't have a real drawing or a real connection in the Black community. They don't have a lot of organizing that they do in the Black community. Essentially, where they get their check, where they get their sustenance is outside of the Black community. Now, of course, that's a conflict of interest. Even if you get your paycheck from the most liberal whites, it's still a conflict of interest, because we need people who are going to prioritize the community, what the community feels, what the community needs, over what other people are telling us that we should feel, telling us that we should need, telling us that we should do. So the idea that you're going to help Black people from the paternalistic liberal platforms, and from there, that's going to help us and trickle down to us. It literally is kind of like a trickle down economics theory to me. It's just not proven. We've seen this happen many times, and it always turns out the same. Eventually, those liberals are going to go into a different issue. Eventually, they're going to talk about something else. Eventually, there's going to be some other movement, and your Black self is going to be left behind while these people have moved on to other things. Meanwhile, the people who you weren't willing to organize with, the people who you weren't willing to engage with in your own community, are still in the same condition. We're still being killed by the police. We're still being killed by each other. We're still being killed in the prisons. We're still being killed in the hospitals. We're still being killed. We're still left in poverty. So while these issues can be trendy, and I say that to say, let's keep in mind, earlier, prior to Ahmaud Arbery, but really prior to George Floyd, people weren't really showing out like that for Black Lives Matter, not for a while. Things had died down. The people who were standing by your side before, they had left. They had been on to other issues, Not saying that those other issues aren't important. I don't think that things like, sexual harassment are not important. Certainly they are. But what happened to the same energy being given to us whenever we were talking about things meaning life or death for our people? The fact that, last big one I really can remember was probably Mike Brown. And then, of course, there's been other police killings. But, after the Ferguson uprising, we saw a lot of the dialogue dwindle. And then after that, you kind of seen the people turn their attention to other issues. And now that, something becomes popular, everyone wants to flock back. Well, guess what? We're in the exact same position that we were in when you left us. So that's why we cannot base our organizing, we cannot base our dialogue, we cannot base our actions on a white platform, a white backing, a liberal, a liberal way of doing things, I guess is the word I'm trying to use, because essentially those people are not going to be left with these issues whenever it's not popular anymore. So I'm saying that to say, a lot of those people with this NFAC coalition, a lot of those people who get their sustenance from the outside community were very critical, and they were very quick to distance themselves from our brothers and sisters who were demonstrating with weapons. And what does that tell you? It's one thing to say, okay, cool, you protest this way and we'll protest that way. But what I noticed on the internet is a lot of Black Lives Matter people saying, hey, don't paint these NFAC, don't paint them as Black Lives Matter. Not everyone who's Black and has a rally is Black Lives Matter. They're doing something different. We're doing this. That quickness to distance themselves from those people who were doing something completely legal. It's not like they went out and were harming people. They weren't even threatening people. They were saying that we're going to protect ourselves. We're going to practice our right to self-defense, which, last time I checked, is in the Constitution of the United States. So they said nothing illegal, although I think all of us should know by now, while it's not illegal for Black people to defend ourselves, in writing, it's an unwritten rule. And we know that this is the case because of how the power structure treats us whenever we do exercise our right to self-determination or our right to defend ourselves. We know that these are unwritten rules. Black people, you are not allowed to defend yourselves. Black people, you are not allowed to organize among yourselves to defend yourselves. That goes against the interest of white supremacy. And so if you do those things, we will do what we can to silence you, even though we won't do it outwardly because we would face ramifications, because that Constitution that we wrote says that, hey, everyone has a right to defend themselves. So that's the unwritten thing, that we won't hear, the power structure say. But, as far as the writing, our people should see. It says in the Constitution, you have a right to defend yourself. You have a right to bear arms. And those people were completely demonstrating within their rights. So the quickness to distance yourselves from people who were doing a legal protest, just like you were, a completely legal protest. No one got hurt. The quickness of yourself to distance yourselves from those people tells me that you are not of our people. You are not of our cause. You are not of our independence. You are not of our self-determination. Again, self-determination. Not others' determination, self-determination. And when you are against the self-determination of our people, that means you are against our interest and you are of the outside community. So that's really what I wanted to point out about this. I was very, I wasn't shocked, but, I think it just really shows a lot of the issues with this movement. I've criticized Black Lives Matter on a number of occasions. Not because I hate the fight against police brutality, by all means, please fight police brutality. I mean, every single Black man I know has been a victim of some type of police, some type of police abuse. So please protest that. Please find ways to dismantle it by all means. But when you look at the way that the people who are elevated in the movement and how they are able to demonize us, and those people will be fine with it. They won't even fight for us. That tells me that this movement is not something that is necessarily being built to change things. It's being built to make other people comfortable and make other people feel like, okay, it's not that bad for them. And okay, we can do something for them without actually changing the total landscape of this country, without actually changing the economic system, without actually changing the prison industrial complex. We can find ways to accommodate our interest and still be somewhat still treat them somewhat decently, still throw them some crumbs, still celebrate Juneteenth, and make them feel good. So those are the things that I'm concerned about. Overall, I think Black Lives Matter as an idea can progress into something bigger, but we have to get out of this mindset that it only has to look like this. This is how we've been doing it, and this is how we're going to stay doing it. We're just going to post on social media. We're going to we're going to have rallies, and we're going to have die-ins, and we're going to have one day where we say, let's boycott, America, and then the next day everyone's going to go flock to the stores and give their money to the same corporation that you would have given it to. We have to have some type of other, means of organizing. Otherwise, this movement is just going to be one that is not built to actually affect change. And so far, it's shown from actions, it's shown from time. This has been going on for a long time if you think about it. Trayvon Martin I mean, how long ago was that? Like 10 years ago, right? At this point, this has been going on for, I think it was 2012, right? So we're nearing 10 years, and I'm sorry if I'm mistaken about the exact time, but it's been a significant amount of time for us to be able to make definitive observations about the effectiveness of the system or the shortcomings of the system. And I think we can objectively say that without organizing in a way that is actually built to change things, change the way things go. That means getting into the economics. That means actually supporting people who say that we're not going to allow the police to just do things to us and we're just going to sit back and play the victim. No, we're going to organize and exercise our constitutional rights. It means supporting those people and not trying to distance yourself from those people. Until we organize in a way to facilitate those types of things, it's not organized to do something that's actually going to change the dynamics of white supremacy being a ever-present force in the Black community. So those are my comments on the NFAC. I love to see your comments as far as what does it show, a lot of the distancing from those people who were, again, practicing their constitutional rights. What does this show? And what can we do moving forward to see more protests like that in our communities? So that's all I have. I'll see you guys in the next video. The Justice Bank. So what is the Justice Bank? I've talked before about the fact that we were trying to do a bail project, but we ended up deciding to do a mutual aid fund. The Justice Bank initiative will essentially take members, and if you would pay a very low monthly membership fee. We're going to keep it low on purpose because we are servicing a people who are the most disenfranchised in this country, the most under attack, and it's not reasonable to expect that there's that someone could pay $30 a month, $50 a month, whenever you are of that group. Now, when you become a member, we're going to have a trial period, maybe say after 3 or 6 months, whatever, you are eligible to petition us for help with your expenses. Now, what type of people who are targeted from the prison industrial complex, what type of people would be eligible? Well, because we're doing a mutual aid society, that would be democratic. What we mean is that if you are a member of the Justice Bank, you would have a say in what types of, let's say, charges or offenses that you want to be covered under the Justice Bank. The idea is that all of us are putting our money in collectively because we are a target of the prison industrial complex. Every single day that we walk out, you as a Black person, you are seen as a criminal in this country, and that is a fact. And we want to offer a type of protection for our people. And almost like an insurance policy, honestly. That if you do have some type of run-in with the law, if you do have a charge, a criminal charge, that you can count on a mutual aid society to help you and assist you with those types of charges.
Nowhere in the world incarcerates as much as we do. We've seen extremely high rates of exposure to the criminal justice system for African American men with very low levels of schooling. So if we think about Black men who were born in the late 1970s and who are growing up through the American prison boom of the 1980s and the 1990s, the chances that they're going to serve time in state or federal prison if they dropped out of high school is about 70%. So going to prison for that group of Black men with very low levels of schooling, that's become a normal life event. And that's really only happened in the last 10 years. We're at this point now where there's about 1.2 million African American children with a parent who's incarcerated. That's about 1 in 9.